Hello, George, Phat into Foodforest. If you're not familiar, I'm just sitting here as I often do, wondering what I want to say about it because I'm just in such awe as I walk around here. It's getting our first frost. We're well into fall, but there's just still so much going on. From the taro, with all the perennials, the herbs mixed in, a few tomatoes trying, the nasturtiums popping like that, all the onions around, the herb spiral. Just so much going on. Some raspberries still trying over here. Obviously the mints and teas. Even a daylily trying. And I just looked when I was going to start the video and saw my chickens out here. So I thought I'd go ahead and do a full tour. I often talk about these swales. You can see there's a small pond there. I used to have a kiddie pool in it. And this is a swale going across here. All the way property wide. It's about 2 foot deep. And it's filled with these wood chips. They become beautiful soil in 1 year by jiggling. You can see that mycelium that's in there. That calls in the insects like that worm. All that helps break down that heavy carbon, adding those castings to it. That'll call in the chickens and ducks. So we're building soil in those swales as well. Lots of things like these hardy peas self-planting themselves all over the place. So plants that reseed themselves here. The Tulsi basil shows up every year. Talk about our zone 1. How we use that hot tub and the self-watering system connected to it from the gutters. We built this hugel mound in a class very beginning of the year. These are my free-range chickens. Come on, let's go. Chick, 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 chick. See if we can get them to follow us. Come on, chick, 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 chick. We're supposed to be in the front yard here. I'm going to go out front here, and this is only 4 years old. This was its 4th year, and this was all free. I call this the free garden. Talk about it in a minute when I get the chickens here. Well, let's go. Let's go. You know where we're going. Right out through that gate. Follow the bark. So working with your animals. We'll talk about this in a minute. Being the free garden. I normally start the tours up here in what I call Mushroom Village. The whole property's got about 20 swales from front to back. It's a big diamond-shaped property. It's a ½ acre in the city of Asheville. And everything we do is trying to collect and store energy. So I talk about it being a permaculture designed food forest. In permaculture, we have 12 principles. We use those for design. Oh, another mushroom popped and I missed it. I digress. I missed shiitake on the new logs over here. And even on these really old logs, they're breaking down. That's oak and I can break it with my fingers. I missed a mushroom. Shiitake. Same thing on those totems. So everything on the property here is done in succession. What do I mean by succession? These woodpeckers. Oh, there's a few of them. Oops. Scattered hay. So, succession. Using succession through the year and succession through the years in that design. So the way I explain that with the mushrooms is through the year would be multiple varieties of lion's mane, oyster, shiitake, chicken of the woods. So at different temperatures, we're always getting something fruiting other than the very coldest and the very warmest days. Below me is a ground cover mushroom, Stropharia, wine cat. Another way of doing it. So having that succession in them, but also succession in the timing of them. We've got 3-year-old logs, 7-year-old logs, 10-year-old logs, one not even a year-old logs. So they're constantly getting mushrooms as they start breaking down and creating soil with what's left. So creating no waste. I think you hear that. That's my new dog Peanut. Let's make sure to say hi. So front yard. Summer bang raspberries are along the front. The water comes in, hits the swale in the front. This swale here is the only swale on the property that actually has a slope to it. Everything else, when I say a swale, is an on-contour level ditch, is a simple way of saying it. Something to catch that water and store it. And this one is not level. This one goes at a 1.5 degree slope to take over the first pond so that my basement doesn't flood. I made videos about it. We created these using an A-frame level. That level showed us where level was on the contour to create these. Again, all these interconnect. I'm constantly doing things. I'm going to go all over the place that I'm talking about here. I just want to show you many of the ways we're using these principles. Creating surplus. Even my prunings last year, not many of those took, but quite a few did, and I potted them up. Those were mulberries. All the rest of these plants we see, I've taken either in their hardwood stage, which is going to be right now when they lose their leaves for winter. Their softwood stage, that first spring, just after spring emergent, when they first start in that soft greenwood. Or semi-hard a little later in the year. They go into this misting station in here. I've just emptied it out and gotten it ready for hardwood cuttings. So all this was free. I learned to take cuttings off the plants I had out back, trade and barter with other people. This is all done in guilds. So you can't tell now, but this is going to be three-dimensional, having the oak tree as a canopy, peach trees down below, hazelnuts and cherries below that, nitrogen-fixing bushes below that, the herbaceous layer below that, ground covers, and some climbers. That's what we do in permaculture. Building a food forest. So here is this ditch out front, this on contour, but actually has a slope to it, swale, into this first pond, into a larger pond there. It goes out and around the corner and goes back down below us in another swale. We'll see where that connects up to the lower ponds here in a minute. But I talk about this, if I had a rain barrel at each gutter, all four corners of the house, 55 gallons each, that'd be 220 gallons of water I would store. In this first small pond, it's around 300, 600, and this next one, 1,000 in the next swale, and so on out through. So we come down and follow this swale here. Another pond for it to settle out in. Bears rip this log apart looking for insects. Goes into this lined pond where the ducks swim. That catches the duck waste. There's a T-valve down below here, a valve I can turn. We'll take a look. And drain this pond. Catching and storing that energy. Using that fertilizer down below. When the rains come, it's hard to believe, but from those gutters and the water coming off the road, this becomes a waterfall. That's why I have this big stone there in the next pond below it. And that goes down to the backyard where we talk about more guilds. This is 10 years old back here. Becoming very mature. Lots of climbing things like grapes here. The hardy kiwis there. Blueberries below us. Elderberries. Around figs being a key species here. Or a lower key species, we'd say. We start out back here in this annual garden where I talked about zone 1. Every day we go and let the chickens and ducks out. This is the food forest side over here. Make these videos. I hope I'm not moving too fast and wasting this whole video, spending this time for nothing. But things like these flowers, we've already had our first frost, or not freeze, but a good frost, and it's still just humming with life. Look at that bee in the pollen. Where'd he go? So, always having something flowering, whether it be the herbaceous layer, that nitrogen fixing layer, the bushes, the goldenrod, which is just finished and gone to seed over there, as many months of the year as we can. Again, this food forest side is done in 3 dimensions. We have the 7 layers of a food forest, we call it. We see those 7 layers anywhere around the world, other than the Arctic, than the poles, or a desert. And so what they are going to be the ground cover layer, the herbaceous layer above that, a lot of herbs, Above that is a short bush layer, shrub layer. Smaller fruit trees and nitrogen fixing bushes in that shrub layer below. Smaller fruit trees. The canopy layer being the larger nut trees like the oaks above us here. And the climbing layer, as well as rooting crops. So I believe that's all 7. Some giant bees. Oh. There's just so much insect life and life all around our yard. I shared the bear videos recently. So we're mimicking those 7 layers all over the place. We do have zones, what we call zones. So zone 1 being our driveway, even where we're coming in and out every day, out of our house to let these chickens in out of the greenhouse every day, where we see stuff every day. Zone 2 would be below that. We're not in this as often, but it does need some attention. See if there's any disease or bugs going on in the long-term annuals and some of the fruit trees in here, fruit crops. Outside of that is a full-on food forest where it's done in guilds. I'd say that's just zone 3 in here because we're such a small property. I'm going to flip over to the annual garden for a minute that we're standing in, and you can see a lot of things have self-seeded themselves. Nitrogen-fixing beans for us, cowpeas. All the fall and winter crops are in, so I've got seeded their carrots and beets and turnips and I'm just drawing a blank. Stuff like that, root crops, mustard greens, and so on. Still have the understory underneath. We still have things. This is a jujube. Underneath, we got the carrots and the comfrey. The comfrey being the deep taproot. Even things like the chives back there. And they've self-seeded themselves, so they go all over the place. Like I said, there's a lot of the stuff we learned to self-seed it. Taking that seed head and I sprinkle them all over the place. So under many of these trees and many of these guilds, we'll have that. We'll have the currants, because I've learned to take cuttings of that in many different stages. The josta berries, the gooseberries, the blueberries, the cherries, the figs, a different cornelian cherry. And then we have above that, this is a pear tree. Being the canopy in here, trying to get as much of that 3 dimensions as we can. Still growing lots of annuals in here. We got some onions planted, some potatoes that showed up. Last, the turmeric. So turmeric, taro, and ginger. We grow those as annuals, even though they're perennials south of here, and we store them for the winter. We have grapes along the fence here. Elderberries coming out of them. Another apple tree on the corner with an open vase shape so we don't get too much shade from it. Oh, this has been a long tour. I think I'm just going to go over and explain one more guild. So we're walking through stuff like this gummy pawpaws. You can see this winter squash has climbed the trellis here. I ripped all the rest down, but there used to be, oh, there's some there. And that tree, that pear tree, had one way up in there. So trellising as many things as we can, that climbing layer, just like the grapes, but doing it with annuals. You ever hate hearing your own voice? Like I'm walking around with a monotone. Anyways, I use this guild for a great example. This apple tree itself has 5 kinds of apples on it. Ducks were going nuts, thought the bear was there. Take it easy. 5 kinds of apples on it. So it's accomplished by grafting those on there. It's given us a lot of different flavors in the small property. We can only have so many apple trees. It's given us diversity against frost. So if early frost comes and the 2 kinds of flower to 3 kinds of flower, we have those other ones still flowering later on. Or a certain disease comes along that bothers one type of apple more than the rest, vice versa, more than one. So we're getting that diversity in flavor and against disease, freezes. So we talk about diversity throughout, trying to have that diversity. A forest never has a great crop one year on any one tree. We've got an amassed year on these acorns this year falling all around us. And they probably be 2 or 3 more years before we get a harvest like that. So having that diversity within here, we're always getting multiple harvests of multiple things. If it's a small harvest out of this apple tree this year that had 5 kinds on it, I've got 4 more on the property. Oh, 1 second, maybe the bear. It wasn't. A good time to talk about. We were just standing there at the bottom of my annual garden. We'll go back talking about this guild here. But I also want to talk about, in guilds, we talk about the edge of the forest, the edge effect. the neighbor's yard here. Her husband passed quite a few years ago, and we've got giant pine trees and some oaks in here. You can tell it feels like you're inside of a forest. It becomes kind of open inside of there. Not much light penetrates. So we want to create that edge effect using guilds all over our property, where we're getting light in all over the place, but having them three-dimensional. So I was talking about the 7 layers we're using here, if we include that oak tree above us, but even using things like these nitrogen-fixing bushes here. So I have a goomyberry behind me, an amber autumn olive, and a silverberry. They all flower at different times and fruit at different times. There's always something flowering and fruiting as many months of the year as possible. The silverberry is just putting flowers on right now that we're getting our first frost and setting berries as we go into winter. And early in the spring, that goomyberry next to it does the same thing. So other than the very coldest times of the year, we've got something flowering and fruiting. The flowering is calling in those beneficials and those pollinators to do their job. The fruiting is feeding us, helping feed them as well. These plants themselves are nitrogen fixers. So you can tell in this autumn olive, I've pruned that back really heavy last year. This year and the beginning of this year. The goomyberry will get it this year. The silverberry next year. Down below it we have bush cherries again. Figs and hazelnuts, coppiced. Down in the shrub layer we have flowers from the inside coming out. That are all designed to flower at the right season. So closest to the tree, when there's no leaves early in the spring, the sun comes out and hits in there, those are the quickest, earliest come up flowers. Coming out to more, the horseradishes mixed in there, and the comfrey, into some foxgloves, more succulents out front, into the black-eyed Susans, and some mints around there. So it's always got something flowering. There's some chokeberries out in front, down to gooseberries, and the jostaberries again, and currants. Wineberries and raspberries. So that's just this one guild here. Even close behind us, an apple with the same thing around it with Jerusalem artichokes mixed in. It's a whole other story. And the canna lilies, using the concrete and stone to create these microclimates where they're catching that energy, that sun's energy during the day, and storing it. All these are hugel mounds behind there. This was one flat, sloped lot, not flat, but a sloped with no contour to it really. The giant dead oak tree we can see up here that dropped. Because of that, I made all these hugel mounds. By hugel mound is buried organic matter, tree branches, that we built up into these wonderful terraces over the years of doing this, by digging these swales out, using that hugel material. We'll have a look. Here's the old stump, right here. This was a giant oak tree. You can see the mushrooms at the side of it. When they dropped it, I used a lot for firewood. At the time, I was just getting going, so I didn't have much money to do these things. So I used these larger pieces as the backdrop for these hugel mounds here. And I took the branch material, stuff that was 6 inches and smaller. It's a whole nother talk about hugel culture. It's the carbon to ratio. The nitrogen ratio on that is about perfect. So you can just bury it. It doesn't steal any nutrition from the soil, no nitrogen from the soil. The blue jays are throwing a fit. Well, this has been really long. Thanks for hanging in, anyone that has. I think we'll just walk up to the main area and say goodbye. But again, the hazelnuts and the cherries and the figs and the gummies and the turkeys. Come on, sit down for everybody. Let's go for a walk. Oh, you got away. Come on, let's go for a walk. What else? You got a few figs left. Oh. Birds fertilizing from above. Leaving in the wild cherries and the natives around us that the wild animals like. Feeds them, but they come in and help take care of our insect problems, fertilize for us, do their part in us. You can hear those blue jays. This is a Nanking cherry. Asian pears, didn't mention those. Multiple varieties of each. Real quick, we'll look. I built a compost yesterday, so how do we run this? We don't bring any inputs in, any fertilizers, no pesticides, no insecticides. So we make compost teas. We have red wigglers set up here. This is a two-layer bin. Red wigglers. I just stirred this compost yesterday. It's up to almost 90, I guess 80, a little over 80 already. Look at the compost tea real quick, I guess. It's Probably got a nice foam head on it. Head of foam on it. I actually used it this morning and refilled it halfway, so it doesn't have much on it. So it's brewing again. I had a compost and molasses to that. That's a whole nother talk about getting those microbes going and building them. Hi, Annie. Well, if you stayed around this long, I really appreciate it. Hope that helped. Let me know what you want to see or what you want to know about here. This is the end of the year, so we've gone through a whole nother season here. I haven't made a lot of these videos this year. I don't do the long ones anymore. I don't seem to get the attention from them. It's hard to watch, I think. But I'd like to know what you want to see. If you've watched this long, you're obviously interested. Let me know what you'd like to see on the property more of, what you'd like to know more about or don't understand. Change is better than a holiday. Change is well overdue. This was our example. Someone told me, what's my platform? This is my platform. I live a wonderful life here, and I'm trying to share that with people. At the same time, we've created a carbon sequestering, oxygen giving, diverse foodscape that feeds us and many animals around us, insects and fungi. Plants, animal, fungi. Change is better than a holiday. Peace.